All right, everybody, let's get started here. The Sparta Board of Education regular meeting is called to order at 7:30 p.m. Neve, can you read the meeting announcement, please?
Yes. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Sparta Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be advertised by having the date, time, and place thereof posted at the Sparta Board of Education office, 18 Mohawk Avenue, as designated by the Board of Education for posting of such notice in a public place. Written notice was emailed on January 11th, 2022 to the New Jersey Herald, the Star Ledger, tapintosparta.net, and to the Township Clerk specifying the date, time, and place of this meeting.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
Sprague. Ms. Collier.
Here.
Ms. Grano.
Here.
Mr. McKiernan.
Here.
Ms. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Morris. Here. Ms. Sealander.
Here.
Dr. Serrano.
Here.
Mr. Palesh.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Will everybody please stand up and join us for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we're going to go right into closed session. So, whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, provides for the exclusion of the public from a meeting in circumstances, and whereas the Sparta Township Board of Education is of the opinion that such circumstances exist to discuss personnel matters which are exempt from public participation pursuant to New Jersey Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, Open Public Meetings Act. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Sparta Board of Education shall enter executive session on, what is today? June 23rd at 7:32 p.m. The board will reconvene in public session at the conclusion of the executive session. The information discussed during the executive session will be closed to the public as soon as it is determined by the board that the information is no longer confidential. Can I have a motion to enter closed session, please? Neve, thank you. Second?
Second.
Kurt, thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
Ms. Sprague. Ms. Collier.
Yes.
Ms. Grano.
Yes.
Mr. McKiernan.
Yes.
Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Morris. Ms. Sealander.
Yes.
Dr. Serrano.
Yes.
Palesh.
Yes. We expect to be in closed session for about an hour, so probably call it 8:35 that we'll resume open session. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We're going to resume open session. So resolved that the Board of Education closes executive session and enters back into the public portion of the meeting at 9:04 p.m. Roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
Ms. Collier,
Here.
Grano. Mr. McKiernan,
Here.
Ms. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Morris. Ms. Sealander.
Here.
Dr. Serrano,
Here.
Mr. Palashi.
Here. Moving right on to presentations. Our board attorney, Mr. Zittimer, is going to give the required annual ethics presentation first.
Can I help you in any way?
No, good, thank you. Take one of these and pass. Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, members of the board, members of the administration, members of the public. By law, the Board of Education annually has to discuss the New Jersey School Ethics Act and the Code of Ethics for Board of Education members, and so this will satisfy our governance requirement. So in New Jersey, the officials, including board members and school administrators, are subject to the New Jersey School Ethics Act. And I think the preamble to the School Ethics Act really sums up nicely why we have a School Ethics Act. And what it says is that in our representative form of government, it's essential that conduct of members of local boards of education and local administrators hold the respect and the confidence of the people, and officials have to avoid conduct which is in violation of the public trust or which creates a justifiable impression among the public that such trust is being violated. And I always advise board members and school officials that if something doesn't pass the smell test, it's something that you should avoid as board members. You not only have to avoid actual conflicts of interest, but you have to avoid what's called the appearance of impropriety. Again, if somebody's going to question why you engaged in a particular course of action, was it for your own personal benefit, for the benefit of a family member, for the benefit of a business organization that you're affiliated with, it's better that you recuse yourself and abstain from that particular issue. Sorry, went too far. All right, now I totally botched that up. There we go. So why are we discussing this? As I mentioned before, New Jersey Code requires that we discuss this annually at a public meeting. All right, I will get the hang of this remote. So who does the Act apply to? The Act applies, of course, to Board of Education members. It also applies to employees of the New Jersey School Board Association, as well as school administrators. A lot of folks don't understand that the School Ethics Act also applies to central office administration, it applies to school principals, and so forth. The Code of Ethics, which I handed out to everybody within the School Ethics Act, only applies to the conduct of board members. And so the Code of Ethics essentially is broken down into two parts. We have the prohibited acts, that essentially deals with conflicts of interest, and that's the conflicts of interest provision section that I just handed out. And then again, we have the Code of Ethics that applies solely to the conduct of board members. So let's go through some of the Code of Ethics provisions and talk about what they mean. Section A says that board members have to enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the state board and court orders pertaining to the school. Obviously, that means you have to comply with the law. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Next, you're supposed to make decisions, educational decisions in terms of the welfare of all children, regardless of race, creed, religion, and so forth. You're supposed to be here for all of the kids, regardless of their social standing, their abilities, and so forth. That's why you're here as board members. Next, you're to confine your board action to policymaking, planning, and appraisal. So the main function of a Board of Education member is policymaking. You are a policymaking body. You plan for the future of the district and you appraise. You take a step back and say, how are we doing? What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And by the way, if there's any questions along the way, don't hesitate to jump in. We have a very large audience here tonight, so I think they'll be okay with that. Section D, I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run. And I think there's an area sometimes when I read the ethics decisions where board members sometimes get themselves into trouble. I think they forget that there's a line between administration. You have an amazing administrative team here in Sparta. They are responsible for running the day-to-day operations of the school district. That is not a Board of Education function.
And so when you look at the Code of Ethics and some of the provisions, it talks about what does somebody have to prove to show that somebody violated that particular provision, for instance. And what the Ethics Commission says is that to say that somebody violated the administration of the school's provision, somebody would have to show that a board member gave a direct order to school personnel or became directly involved in activities or functions that are the responsibility of school personnel or the day-to-day administration of the school district. And so by way of example, in a case called Delsey Board of Ed, and the board member's last name was Lon, the School Ethics Commission found a violation where a board member asked for copies of SAT reports directly from a guidance secretary, did his own inspection of the school district lockers, and then went out into the gym in the middle of a gym class and basically told the PE teachers how they should be better doing their jobs. That's a clear example of a board member getting in the weeds, getting into administration, giving direct orders, certainly not a board member function. Next. Okay, this battery's really weak. Okay. I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will not make personal promises or take private action that could compromise the board. So as board members, you have authority to act, obviously, when you're at a duly convened meeting like this. You have authority to act when you're working through your various committees. But once you leave the room, you do not have the authority to bind the Board of Education, speak for the Board of Education, do your own investigations. That's considered private action. That is a violation of the school code of ethics. Next. Section F says you're supposed to refuse to surrender your independent judgment to special interest groups or partisan political groups, or use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends. I think that's pretty obvious. Does that mean you can't advocate for a particular group? No, that's not what that means. What it says, and if you look at the words carefully, it's surrendering your independent judgment, losing all form of objectivity. But if you want to advocate for a group, and that's why you got on the Board of Education, of course you're here for all the children, but there's nothing wrong with advocating for a group in a particular circumstance. Next, as you know, as board members, you come across a lot of confidential information. We discuss in closed session attorney-client privilege matters, litigation matters, student matters, personnel matters, and a lot of other things. And it is essential that the board members keep that information confidential. Your family members are not bound by the Code of Ethics. Your significant others, your friends, and so forth. You should not be sharing this information with anybody. And I always tell my school district clients that if the board members don't feel confident that when we have a private conversation in closed session that it's going to stay in closed session, it really undermines our ability to be an effective body, because nobody's going to want to speak openly and honestly for fear that as soon as we leave the room, everybody's going to know that board member X said this about this particular issue and board member Y said this. And it just impedes good decision making. It impedes healthy debate. So I want to remind everybody that confidentiality is such an important part of being a Board of Education member. Next, you're supposed to support and school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. And if somebody were to show that somebody violated this section, they would have to show that a board member took action to undermine, oppose, compromise, or harm school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. Does that mean board members can't ask good questions of the administration? Of course not. Does that mean board members have to support everything that comes their way? Of course not. You're allowed to ask good questions. You should ask good questions. You're allowed to disagree and vote no on issues if you have a good reason for doing so. So it doesn't mean you have to be a rubber stamp. It just means you're not allowed to evaluate the administration, for instance, in a public arena. That's one example. Next, you're supposed to appoint the best qualified personnel after considering the recommendation of the chief school administrator. We've talked about this before, and that's that the superintendent of schools is the only one who can recommend personnel decisions in a school district. A board member, for instance, couldn't vote to appoint somebody or terminate somebody or transfer somebody or demote somebody without the recommendation of the superintendent. That is New Jersey law. And as you also know, personnel actions in a school district require 5 yes votes regardless of how many people show up for a meeting. So a quorum of this board would be 5 people. And if 5 people show up for a meeting, you'd obviously need unanimity on any personnel recommendations on that particular night. I skipped one, hold on. So Section J is the section that I think allows board members to punt. And what I mean by that is when you're at the local supermarket and a parent comes up to you and complains that their child's teacher is giving too much homework or there's something wrong with the school district that they're not satisfied with, Section J says you're supposed to refer all complaints to the chief school administrator and act on those complaints only after the failure of an administrative solution. So when I say punt, it's your opportunity to say to that parent, thank you for bringing that concern to my attention. I'm going to refer it to Dr. Beck, who's going to get back to you, and I'm sure you will get a timely response. That's what you're supposed to do when complaints come to your attention. It's also proper, by the way, to refer folks to the chain of command. If they say that there's some issue going on, there's nothing wrong with a board member saying, hey, have you spoken to your child's teacher first? Have you then gone to the principal and then to the assistant superintendent and so forth, all the way up to the chain before bringing it to the superintendent's attention. So who can file a complaint if somebody feels that there's been an ethical violation? The answer is that anybody can file a complaint alleging an ethical violation. There is a 6-month statute of limitations. Where am I supposed to be pointing this? Because it just doesn't seem to be very... Am I pointing this right at the screen? Anybody see? I don't even see a laptop. Oh, on the stage. Okay, thank you. Maybe I'm just not pointing it at the right place. Thanks. There's a 6-month statute of limitations. So what that means is you have to file the complaint within 6 months of the time of the alleged violation. Otherwise, it's considered time barred. The School Ethics Commission actually shortened that window of time. Going back about 5 years ago, there used to be a 1-year statute of limitations, and they narrowed it down to 6 months, and I think that's probably because they were getting so many complaints. So the complaint does have to be filed within 6 months. The School Ethics Commission is really the only entity that can determine whether or not a board member or a school official's conduct violated the School Ethics Act or the Code of Ethics. We cannot, as a board, determine that somebody violated the ethics. I can certainly give my opinions. I've read 99% of the cases, so I have a pretty good understanding about whether something is a violation or not, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's only the School Ethics Commission that can make that determination. Now, there is a process in the code where if a board member or a school official wants to know about a proposed course of action, they're not sure how to act, again, you're certainly welcome to reach out to me. I'll give you my opinion, but if you want to go a little more formal, you can request an advisory opinion from the School Ethics Commission, and they will give you a written determination about a proposed course of action. So I haven't done that very much in my career. I did do it not too long ago in one of my school districts that I represent, where actually a senior high school student got on the Board of Education. Very unusual situation. He was 18 and got elected to the Board of Education. He was a senior, and the board said to me, Mark, can he vote on his teachers? Can he vote on his classmates? So, what are the limitations of a senior student who's still in school? We wrote to the School Ethics Commission and got an advisory opinion. You can go read it. And they laid out, here's what he can do, and here are the things that he can't do. So that's just one example. Okay, what are the sanctions for violating the School Ethics Act? So at the light end of the spectrum, you have a reprimand. That's a written letter from the School Ethics Commission. A censure is a resolution admonishing a board member at a public meeting. A suspension, that's actually removing the board member for a certain period of time. And then lastly, removal from the Board of Education in the most extreme cases. New Jersey, this is important for board members to know, because no board member would, I think, ever run for the Board of Education if somebody can file a complaint against a board member and they would be on the hook for their own legal fees and costs and expenses. So there is a statute in New Jersey education law that basically says that if a complaint, whether it's a lawsuit, generally an ethics complaint in most cases, is brought against a board member, the Board of Education has to indemnify the board member for your defense costs. And so it is important to know that if the conduct arose out of the course of your duties as a board member and a lawsuit is filed against you, an ethics complaint is filed against you, we do have insurance for those cases, and you will be assigned an attorney to represent you. And the standard isn't whether you're guilty or innocent. The standard is whether the conduct arose out of the course of your duties as a board member. So, for instance, even if you were accused of violating the Ethics Act by voting on something where you had a clear conflict of interest, you voted to appoint your brother to a teaching position in the district, for instance, you'd still be entitled to indemnification because the complaint would have arisen by something you did as a board member. Okay. Next. One of the questions I often get is, do board members lose their First Amendment rights by having been elected to the Board of Education? And the answer is clearly no. You still have your First Amendment rights to express your opinions on a multitude of issues. The limitations are, we talked about, you can't divulge confidential information. You have to provide accurate information to the public. So you're a board member and you can't say, hey, I'm voting against this year's school budget because we're adding 12 new administrative positions in Sparta, if that's not an accurate statement. In fact, if we're only adding one administrative position, you can't say we're adding 10. That's a violation. That would not be protected speech. And then lastly is, does your speech have the potential to compromise the Board of Education? And I'll give you an example of that a little bit later on in the presentation. The other constraint is you can't publicly criticize staff because, as I mentioned before, you have to support and protect school personnel. The other thing you need to know is that if you post on social media, if you like to post on social media, a lot of board members do, or if you like to write letters to the newspapers or give speeches to organizations, you have to have a disclaimer. You have to say, I'm speaking as a private citizen. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Board of Education, just so that folks know that you're speaking, again, as an individual and not on behalf of the Board of Education. I gave everybody a copy of the handout. Here's the model disclaimer language that the School Ethics Commission likes you to use, so I'm not going to read it now. You all have a copy of that. So every year, you know, I like to do a little quiz. I'm not going to call on anybody individually, but I'm going to get your thoughts. These are real cases that have come out this past year from the New Jersey School Ethics Commission, and so because my eyes are really not great, I got to get it. Well, all right. Do my best. A board member violated Section I of the code, and you all have copies of it in front of you, and that's the section saying that you have to support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. So the complaint, this is a real complaint last year, so this is a true or false. A Board of Education member violated Section I of the code when he attributed the alleged poor reading result of teachers in the lower grades by stating in a public board meeting, I know that the conversation started with the high school ranking. We must look to what's coming to our high school. If we're not doing what we need to do at the lower levels, we're going to have to continue, are we going to continue to get these results? Are they students that have been in Union, that's the name of the town, since kindergarten? That would indicate to me that there's something wrong with our teaching staff. And somebody filed an ethics complaint saying, hey, that's not supporting personnel. You're basically saying that the kids aren't performing well at the high school because the lower grade level teachers aren't doing their job. So what do you think, folks? Is this a violation or is this not a violation? How many people think it's a violation? True. How many think it's not a violation? It was not a violation, and it's supposed to pop up with my true here for some reason. That's not working. It was not a violation, and what the School Ethics Commission said was that the board member did not call out anybody by name. It was just a more general statement. What he said was, it says, even if not well received by the complainant or other teaching staff, the board member's comment did not identify a single district teaching staff member by name as being bad or the sole reason why student performance was being stymied. Instead, respondents simply questioned what could possibly be driving the results, educational outcomes for the students of the district, and cited the quality of teaching performance as a possible source thereof. As such, the Ethics Commission finds that the alleged violation of Section I should be dismissed. So it was not a violation. How about this one? A board member who was a deacon with a local church and received an annual $2,000 bonus honorarium for his services violated Section C of the Ethics Act. And this is not the Code of Ethics, this is the Ethics Act, which says, no school official shall act in his official capacity in any manner where he, a member of his immediate family, or a business organization in which he has an interest, has a direct or indirect financial involvement that might reasonably be expected to impair his objectivity or independence of judgment. So do you think this was a violation of C when he made a motion and then voted to approve his church's use of school facilities? This was a church that he actually got $2,000 from as an honorarium. How many people think that's a violation? Yes? Yes, it was absolutely a violation, and the deacon said, well, it was de minimis. It was only $2,000, and the School Ethics Commission said that is not de minimis. You have to list on your disclosure form any honorarium received for $250 or more. That was 10 times that amount. He absolutely should have abstained on the church's use of his facilities, the church's use of the school facilities. Okay, I gotta get closer for this one. Yeah. So how about this one? A board member violated Section D of the code when he emailed the football coach about his players taking a knee to games. So at a particular football game, all the players took a knee, and a particular board member was very unhappy about it, emails the coach, and what he says is, I'd like a full explanation for what some of our players did last night. This is not who we are in Barnegat. I'm outraged and saddened by this, and there are hundreds of more people like myself that have the same feelings. And he signs it, Rick Quelch, Barnegat Board of Education member. He then goes on to say, when he doesn't get a response, I'm still waiting to hear from you, Mr. Davis, about this matter. If you think for 1 minute I'm going to let this disrespectful stunt go, you're wrong. As an elected official, you're disrespecting me for not giving me your side of the story. I'm giving you until Monday. Rick Quelch, Barnegat Board. And then he says, I think you're forgetting who your boss is. I will see you Monday morning. So does anybody think that that is a violation of Section D of the Code of Ethics? With that email exchange to a coach. How many think that that is a violation? Yeah, clearly a violation. And for the viewing audience, Section D is that you're not going to administer the schools, but together with your fellow board members, see that they are well run. Okay, how about this one? Good job. We're off to a really good start here. Section E, was this section violated? And that section deals with recognizing your authority rests with the board and making no personal promises or taking private action. So a board member made this statement regarding his fellow board members at a board meeting. And so what he says about his fellow board members is, if you don't already know my position on a lot of these things, it should be clear that I don't agree with Mr. Budo, another board member. I don't agree with the complainant, another board member, on most topics. And I don't agree with Ms. Sullivan on most topics, okay? They represent an extreme right wing, as do some of the members of this audience. And somebody filed an ethics complaint against him saying that was a violation, that was taking private action that could have compromised the Board of Education. Do you think that that was protected speech, or do you think that that was okay? What do you think? True violation or false? Yell out. It was not a violation. You're right. It was not a violation. And what the Ethics Commission said was, while complainant was clearly offended and affronted by respondent's public statements claiming that she, among the other members, were extreme right-wing individuals, respondent's public statements from the dais do not constitute a personal promise or private action. As a board member, respondent's duties allow him to make statements, comments about board business, even if the statements, comments are not well received or appreciated by others, including members of the board and the board president. If respondent's statements constitute slander, then as discussed, the complainant can go file any other action he or she feels appropriate. So in other words, the School Ethics Commission doesn't have jurisdiction over slander actions. If you felt it was slanderous, go file a slander complaint, but it was not an ethics violation. How about this one? Did a board member violate Section B of the Ethics Act? No school official shall use or attempt to use his official position to secure unwarranted privileges or advantages for himself, members of his immediate family, or others when he voted on certain agenda items that included her ex-spouse. This is a little bit of a tricky one. So do you think a board member can vote on items involving an ex-spouse who's an employee of the district? Do you think that's a violation or not? It's a little bit tricky. What's that? Ex-spouse. So Patrick thinks it's a violation, and the answer is it depends. So the answer is if the spouses are somehow linked together still, in other words, they're providing child support or alimony, there's some financial connection, then the School Ethics Commission said they should have abstained. But if there's no connection financially or personally anymore, then their relationship, they're no longer relatives, and there's no ties between them, and that would be okay. So again, it depends on what the connection still is between the two individuals. How about this one? A board member violated Section E, F, and G, and you have them there in front of you. E is recognizing authority rests with the board, not making personal promises. F is surrendering your independent judgment to special interest groups. And G is holding confidential matters. And so did a board member violate this section when he and other township officials distributed a flyer requesting that they vote for candidates in the 2019 Democratic primary election? The primary mentioned, among other things, that the persons named on the flyer supported South Asian persons and culture and stated that the opponent was a leader of a radical group. The board member signed the flyer, and the signature included his picture and his name, followed by the words, Board of Education. There was no disclaimer on the flyer. Is that a problem? Yeah, it's a problem. So as a board member, you're allowed to endorse candidates for office. You just need to make it clear that you're speaking as an individual, and you need to have that disclaimer on there. Just a few more, and then we're done. How about this one? A board member violated section I and G of the code. And so I is supporting and protecting school personnel, and G is confidentiality. So did a board member violate those sections when she shared a post on her Facebook page that casted the complainant, who was a substitute teacher employed by the board, in a negative light? So this is a board member posting about a substitute teacher in the district. The post alleged that the substitute was removed from her position as a result of unspecified misconduct. It identified the substitute by name. Problem or not a problem? Problem, big problem. That is not supporting and protecting school personnel. That's different from the first slide, where it was kind of a general statement about the teachers and questioning. This was actually calling out a sub on Facebook. How about this one? Next one. A board member violated Section B of the Ethics Act when she voted to approve a resolution acknowledging the superintendent had completed merit goals. The board member's child was a teacher in the district. As such, at the time of the vote, the superintendent had supervisory authority over the child. Should the board member have abstained on that? Absolutely. Everybody in the chain of command, if you have a board member who's a relative in a school district or an immediate family member in the district, even a custodian, a secretary, whoever it is, you are conflicted about everybody all the way up the chain of command, all the way up the organization chart to the superintendent of schools. You have to abstain, you have to not participate in the superintendent's evaluation, and so forth. Okay, last one, and this is one that just made me scratch my head because it goes into the, what were they thinking category. A board member violated Section E of the Code of Ethics, and Section E says, you will not make personal promises or take private action that could compromise the Board of Education. So did a board member violate this section when he posted on a Facebook page many anti-Muslim sentiments, including a picture of Congressman Omar wearing a hijab and referring to her as terrorist 100%? In another post, he shared a photo of a doll and bruises on its chin. The text under the photo stated, "Sharia Barbie comes with hijab, bruises, and the Quran. Stoning accessories available for additional purchase." Problem or not a problem?
That's a problem.
That's a big problem. That was clearly a violation. And, I thought the quote from the judge in that case was really something that summed it up really well. And what the judge said in finding a violation is that it's not a stretch to consider that students or families of students of the Muslim faith may fear that their culture or faith may play a role in adverse decisions by the board based on his public expression of negative attitudes towards Muslim culture and faith. Furthermore, they may well be discouraged from even seeking redress to the Board of Education if they feel there's no point. The judge contends that this is clearly an example of conduct that would cause members of the board to lose confidence and respect of the people and create an unjustifiable impression that such trust is being violated. I think that summed it up really well. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, worries, concerns about anything I talked about tonight? You good? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to turn it over now to Ms. Rossi to introduce St. Elizabeth's College.
Now we're on. Yep. Okay, I just want to introduce Liz Warner and Trish Heindel, who we've been working with as we developed a relationship with St. Elizabeth University, I believe, right? So we're going to get that right. And we are working with them at each school within the district on something called a SCAPE plan, which stands for a School Climate Improvement and Assessment Plan. It's data-driven, and it's going to help us ensure that we have a proper focus on the things that matter most in a plan for evaluating and supporting those things. So I'm going to turn this briefly over to them. And this is what you would use to change the slides. It sounds like it might be sticking a little bit. So
Okay.
Just give it a good.
We'll do the best we can. That's right, at the computer. Anyway, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm a little shorter, I believe, than the other gentleman. So I'm Liz Warner, and this is Trish Heindel, and we're the co-founders and co-directors of the School Culture and Climate Initiative. And we have a short PowerPoint for you. There we are. Those are our details. We're based at the Center for Human and Social Development, And we've been at the university now for working with schools for many years. And I think it's worth mentioning that Trish, in addition to being the co-director and co-founder of the School Culture and Climate Initiative, she's also, as you can see, many other things. She's Dean of Professional Studies at the university, as well as a professor of psychology and a former chair of the department as well. So we've been, she's a busy woman.
And so is.
Oh, there we go. So the School Culture and Climate Initiative, we offer support, a number of different supports to schools. Everything from what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is the school climate assessment and improvement process, but we have a lab at the university, as well as school support networks where we connect educators, and offer professional development to schools all over the place, including SEL coaching. So we have a wide range of supports that we're just, thrilled and to be able to work with schools and really create resources and supports that seem to really make a difference. So we've also been working together for 14 years. We're nationally recognized. We, are very proud of some of the awards and recognitions that we have. We think it's very important that we learn from others, so we've always appreciated the opportunity to, be working with the organizations that have kind of recognized us as well. So today, we're going to be quite quick because we know it's a little bit late. And you will, this PowerPoint, of course, will be available. But we're just going to talk about the climate work that we're going to be doing in the district over the course of the next 3 years. And then to talk about kind of what's going to be unfolding over the next year or so. And then, of course, we're very happy to answer any questions. And I think it's worth mentioning that in our approach to working with schools, we start from the perspective of what do kids need to thrive in school and in life. And that really big picture is incredibly important, and we love this quote from Frederick Douglass. When you think he said this about 160 plus years ago, that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults. And so we're very much about prevention. We're very much about giving the staff and the students the tools to really thrive. So we're all about tier 1. Here we go. So what is school climate? School climate is really, how does it feel? Does a school feel safe, emotionally and physically safe? Does it feel welcoming? Does it feel like a place you want to be? Is there energy? A school, we all walk into a school and it feels, you can feel it. And so a positive school climate is conducive to learning and teaching and thriving. So there's decades and decades of research about the benefits of school climate. But to achieve a positive school climate, it's really important to be intentional, and we take a very data-driven, intentional approach. And for school climate work, even though it's been recognized by the state of New Jersey, it's incredibly important for bullying prevention. It's also, the last couple of years have made it even more important. This has been unprecedented, what's happened the last 2 years. It's really important to go back to basics, to make sure that those buildings, those hallways, athletic fields, meetings, feel welcoming, safe, supportive, where it's about relationships and positive relationships. And now is the time to do this work. So we're thrilled to be working with Sparta. And we've had the great privilege of working with the district in previous years as well. So it's just great to be here. And it's really worth noting that part of our process, what it does really well is create a framework to engage student and staff voice constructively and positively. And that makes things just so much more efficient, and it puts the energy and the momentum going forward, which is important because it's just so hard at the moment for everyone. So that's something that is important to understand. So this is our model. We're totally not about silos, and we know a coordinated approach is incredibly important. And so, but it needs to be on a foundation of data-driven decision-making. So sort of the key things that go into a thriving school and thriving students are social and emotional skills, positive culture, school culture and climate, a coordinated, unjumbled schoolhouse, and then, of course, mental, emotional, and physical health. We also know that people learn from one another. So that's why this is all on a foundation of data and constant learning, continuous improvement models, and we all are. It's also really important to understand, a lot of times, people are focusing schools on social emotional skills. Another group might be focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion. Another focus on school climate. Well, they're absolutely interrelated, and it's very important to understand that relationship, which is the social emotional skills of the people in that school environment, in that building, in those hallways. Those skills create the positive school climate, and it's within that positive school climate that all those skills can be practiced. So they're absolutely interrelated. And then likewise, diversity, equity, inclusion. The whole idea is that everyone feels safe and supported and a sense of belonging and connection, which is exactly what a positive school climate is. And then, of course, the trauma-informed practice, the world, we should all be treating each other with a trauma-informed approach all the time. So that's absolutely a part of this as well. So it's just important to understand the interconnection of all of this. So the process itself is 3 years. It is worth noting, some of you may have heard of a gentleman named Dr. Maurice Elias. He's based at Rutgers. We have the great good fortune of having him here in the state of New Jersey. He's one of the leaders in school climate improvement and social emotional learning. Our approach to school climate assessment is a model that he created 30 years ago now. Many kudos to him. We stand on his shoulders. We have partnered, over 140 schools in New Jersey have gone through this process with us. We've been doing this work for a long time. It's 3 years, it's comprehensive, and very importantly, it includes data collection, data analysis, in-school support, and creating tangible school improvement plans. We know that all the educators, all the administrators, Board of Ed members, you have so much on your plate that being able to provide a framework and a process can take a lot of the heavy lifting off of schools. And we're all about just helping. And we also have a PLC where schools can learn from one another who are all partaking in the process. So the goals of the intentional school climate work is to build capacity within the school, create the framework for both staff and student voice, to help coordinate programs, that sort of thing over the 3 years, is to positively impact those key drivers. And at the bottom, you can see some of those. These are just a few of the drivers that have been well documented through years of research. Staff indicators of example, staff morale, professional interaction, effective discipline. Student indicators, as an example, student connectedness, student voice, friendship and belonging, student respect. These things are incredibly important, have been shown to directly impact academic achievement, emotional distress, bullying. Very, very important. So this directly provides the framework and the process to do that. And then, as we mentioned before, a structure for staff and student voice. Also, it's data-driven, which is incredibly important because that provides a direction for the conversations to be had that's not personal. The data informs the conversations, and it sort of neutralizes the conversations where everyone can kind of be involved and engaged. So, consistent messaging is incredibly important too. There is such a word salad in the world of school climate, and whether it's EQ, SEL, character, it just goes on and on and on. So consistent messaging is incredibly important. So this is a school-led district-wide approach. The magic happens in the schools. Every single school is different. But here in Sparta especially too, the kids move from school to school so frequently. It's very important that the schools are talking to one another, and that that the kids are not getting very dissimilar messages from school to school. So it's school-led. The schools run the process themselves, but we are forming a district team to ensure that schools know what each other are doing, and district sort of strengths and opportunities will be identified that are common across schools. So it's quite important to understand that the schools lead the process. And Trish, I'm going to turn this bit over to you. Thank you.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the specific deliverables, so you get a better sense of what we'll be doing, a better concrete sense of what we'll be doing. So there are really 3 prongs to the process. We start with creating infrastructure in each school building, not by creating more work or more teams, but really using the teams, the structures that are in place in the buildings. Most of the schools that we've worked with use the school safety team, the mandated school safety team, as the school climate team for our process. We just help teams to expand and add more membership to that team so that we have broad voice on the staff climate team. We also help facilitate schools to create a student climate team. And again, we don't want to make more work for anyone. So many buildings have some structures in place already, or pull more kids in, again, so we have diversity and voice. So one of the first things that we help the staff team to do is to start with a visioning for the process. Which engages them in conversation about what they want the school to be in terms of what kids leaving will be leaving with in terms of values, skills, et cetera. We engage the team in a core values conversation because the core values flowing from the culture inside each building drive the climate, because that really drives the behavior and the relationships between people. So whether there is a set of core values already inside the school building, we still have that conversation with the staff team, the student team as well, and we've had schools in the past working with us who had students talk about core values that were already existing, and they added some to the core values of the building. I don't know what that message is saying to me because it's too far away for me to see. Thanks. So we do this foundational work to really set the stage for why this process and the goals of this process. And hopefully from the way that you're hearing us describe this, it's not our process. We facilitate the process. It's the school's process, and the school has ownership. But it's also at the school's pace. So this isn't a race. We don't have a timetable. We don't require staff to do heavy lifting and to meet stringent deadlines at all. It's the pace that works for the school. So next, part of the data-driven piece is to really collect data related to school climate in these school buildings. So that is going to involve a comprehensive school climate survey, which I'll talk a bit about in a second and answer questions that you have about for sure. But we also engage the team and ask the team to engage others in creating a comprehensive resource mapping, a program inventory inside the building of what's going on in the building that has anything to do with climate, SEL, character development. And it's a really informative exercise because, as Liz said, too, we know you guys are really, really busy, and so are the educators in the building. So instead of being additive, we want to help the schools to be more efficient and to look for overlap, to look for where there are opportunities for gains in efficiencies, to be doing things more coordinated. And the staff team becomes that table that can help in that coordination. We also ask the staff team to really consider all other data, school-reported indicated data that's correlated or related in any way to school climate. So from that data conversation, and I'll talk about the data review in a second regarding the survey, that's what's going to drive the improvement work. So it is very, very, very data-driven. But we want to ensure sustainability at the end of the third year. This should be the school's way of being, and it does become that. And so the infrastructure, this coordinating body, is really very important. And we also look for the administration and you all to support the ongoing effort. So it's not, all this effort doesn't go to waste at the end of those 3 years. We do a baseline and follow-up, so you'll hear from us the impact that the 3-year process has had and on what. But just to really get to know. There. The year one focus, again, just to give you some concrete vision of what's happening, we have the focus there, really pretty much summarizing what I just said, but then just want to talk very briefly about the climate assessment survey. We have a series of different versions of the comprehensive school climate assessment survey. It's been used now in like over 200 schools across New Jersey. And we have a student version and we have a staff version. We also have a parent version. If parents are engaged in this process, that's to be discussed. The student, all students complete the survey, all staff complete the survey. It's completely anonymous. We administer that electronically out of the lab. We collect the data, we do the data analysis, we create the data reports. We come in and inside each school have a two-hour plus data review conversation with the staff climate teams, and we help the team turnkey a presentation to the student team, very high level. What we want to glean from both the student survey and the staff survey are strengths and opportunities. It's 2 hours of conversation about what happened on all of the drivers of climate and where there were strengths and where there are opportunities for improvement. And it's those strengths and opportunities that we glean from that conversation with the team that directs the action planning and the work that moves forward to address not only understanding why strengths are what they are, so we can continue those efforts to keep those strengths, but also addressing those opportunities. And the really neat thing about the staff survey is it has 2 parts. We want to hear the staff voice about the drivers of staff climate, but we also ask staff their perceptions of the students' climate in the school, and then we can directly compare the two. We also disaggregate the data by key subgroups as well. So it's a very fundamentally important part of the process, but the process is the most important impact that the SCAPE work has. And it is a process, not a program. We really want to make sure that is understood. So I think we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah, questions?
And ask if you have any questions. And thank you for your stamina.
Yeah, really. Talk about resilience.
You had a great quiz. Let's do another presentation.
You're still smiling.
Well, you have very good energy for nearly 10 p.m. My question is regarding the student survey. Is there a difference in the level that you give, so like that we get feedback from our youngest learners?
Yes, that's a great question. If you didn't hear it, it was does the student survey come in different levels? I'm not so perky at 10 o'clock. Yes, and we also even have a pilot climate survey that we've been using for K-2 kids, which is a 5-item at their reading level, really asking about key drivers, again, at their reading level. So Alpine, for example, we have an opportunity to collect student voice there. So we have K-2. And then the valid survey is 3rd grade, elementary, middle school, and then high school as well. And the staff survey is the same, no matter what the level is.
Great.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, moving on to student representatives report. I don't believe we have any students here
No,
tonight.
students are off.
Okay, students are out. All right. Moving on to approval of minutes. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Who was that motion? Wendy, thank you. Second?
Second.
Vanessa, thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Grano,
Yes.
Mr. McKiernan,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Morris, Ms. Sealander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Pleshy.
Yes. Moving on to superintendent's report. Dr. Beck?
Yes, thank you. A few updates to provide you. First, last meeting, it was discussed and suggested that possibly we do exit interviews for our staff members, and that was a great suggestion. We are actually in the works. We are actually improving our onboarding system and our exit system when we take on new staff and as staff exit. we're coming up with new checklists, revised checklists, and part of that checklist will be exit interviews for our staff. And we're going to find some sample exit interviews, and we're going to compile what questions should be on those exit interviews. So that I wanted to let the public know, because it was brought up in public last session, that was already in the works, and it was a great suggestion. And also, as part of that suggestion was the suggestion of implementing climate surveys. Well, as you see, next school year, also part of the plan to administer school climate surveys. So I just want to follow up with that public comment from last week. Moving on to the topic of retirees. So last June, the Board of Education honored our retirees for the 2021 school year. And for multiple reasons, a lot of retirees did not show up that evening, mainly because school had just let out, I would assume. So in an effort to increase the attendance for honoring our 21-22 school year retirees, I've recommended that we utilize the September board meeting, and hopefully we're able to welcome back and honor our retirees from this school year after the summer break. Hopefully we get a better turnout for that. On the topic of air quality tests, as you recall from last summer, we experienced a mold issue as a result of the HVAC repairs at Helen Morgan School. Once the mold was remediated, we were required to perform air quality tests to ensure a safe occupation. You might also recall that we took that opportunity to not only perform the air quality test at Helen Morgan, but we went above and beyond to perform air quality tests in all of our buildings. And at that time, I promised this would be an annual practice. And I'm just updating that this will continue to be an annual practice. In fact, I met with Mr. Tappan, who's in the back of the auditorium, met with him last week, and we established a plan to once again perform random air quality tests in each of our buildings early this summer, just as we did last summer. So just maintaining the promise of that annual practice. Update on the student front, the NJDOE Sparta High School art program. So students from pre-K through 12th grade statewide were offered the opportunity to submit their work to the New Jersey Department of Education for a showcase. So across the state, 1,400 students submitted their work, and the NJDOE created a website that contains the art of the students received from across New Jersey. The original art is based on the individual students' interpretation of the theme, hope, healing, and resilience through the COVID-19 pandemic. Students were encouraged to submit one original piece of two-dimensional art that conveyed a positive message of hope, healing, and resilience. And 3 of our Sparta High School students were selected to have their art displayed on the statewide website. Those students are Devin Dean, Caitlin Peterson, and a student who prefers to be referred to by their initials of EL. So congratulations to those students, and thank you for representing our department, our art department, with pride. And if you were interested in checking this out, I'm sure you can simple Google search of the NJDOE Hope, Healing, and Resilience. We'll probably get you to that website. And you can see our students' artwork, and students' artwork from across the state is really very impressive. I reached out to Mr. Stoner a couple days ago to see if he could give me a list of athletic accomplishments, as we typically do. That list was unbelievably lengthy, and he said, yes, of course it was, Matt. We had a good season. We had good seasons throughout the spring. We're still waiting for the state level recognition, so I'm going to hold off on sharing the league level, and I'll combine it with the state level at the next meeting in the interest of not repeating myself and in the interest of time this evening. One final note that I don't have on my superintendent report, but I just wanted to follow up on, and that was regarding the forum that Mrs. Rossi and I held prior to this board meeting. We held a community forum where all the community was welcome. We also live streamed that forum where we discussed the new health and physical education standards that we are currently creating curriculum for. So Mrs. Rossi shared a lot about what those standards are and what the expectations are from the state, and she shared with the public what our plans are and how we plan to create that into curriculum and how we plan to implement those standards. So then there was time for discussion, there was time for questions, not enough time for discussion and questions, as is usually the case with community forums. So I encouraged everybody at the forum, and I'm encouraging anybody that's listening to the live stream this evening, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the implementation of the health and PE standards, to please reach out to Mrs. Rossi or myself at our email addresses. They're very simple, matthew.beck or tara.rossi@sparta.org. And please, your input is encouraged, your input is welcome. And we'll continue to keep the community updated when it comes to that curriculum and the other curricula. We're working on many curricula over this summer that need to be updated for the start of next school year. So I want to throw that into the report as well. And that is the end of the report.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Beck. Moving on to section 11, approval of the HIB report. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Neve, thank you. Second? Kurt, thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Grano,
Yes.
Mr. McKiernan,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Morris, Ms. Sealander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Ms. Palush.
Yes. Moving on to section 13, do we have any delegate liaison reports for tonight?
I can speak to the Diversity Council. They had a very successful inaugural Pride celebration with the showing of Always Jane. There was a lot of good information that was presented, as well to highlight just some of the specific concerns that affect students and members of our community, of the LGBTQI community. So it was a really nice celebration. And I also wanted to bring to our attention, Anika Noel was selected as the intern for the Askin and Hooker Internship Award. Askin and Hooker is a local law firm that has really partnered with the Diversity Council, and she is a rising senior at SHS, has participated in the mock trial team, has an interest in pursuing a career in environmental law, and the firm acknowledged that she was bright, enthusiastic, very eager to learn, and that they're excited to have her on this summer at their law firm to give her some hands-on real-world experience. So we're thankful to see these continued opportunities for our students in the community.
If I could just add to that and thank Scott Kircher, who's in our audience tonight, for spearheading the Always Jane event, which was very well attended, and for also helping spearhead our relationship with Askin Hooker law firm as well.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you both. Anyone else? Yeah. All right, moving on to public comment number 1. Public comments are invited on matters pertaining only to action items at this time. Please state the action item number as well as your name, municipality, and group affiliation if appropriate for the record. Each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. There will be a countdown timer. You will be notified when there is 1 minute remaining, and then again when the time is up at the end of 3 minutes. Speakers may not cede their time to others. The board uses the public comment period as an opportunity to listen to citizen concerns, but not all issues brought to a board meeting will be resolved this evening. Rather, the board will, in appropriate cases, delegate the authority to investigate the matter to the superintendent or his designee. The board does not endorse your comments, nor will the board be held liable for comments you make about a staff member or other person, which they may consider defamatory and/or slanderous, as that individual retains all rights to pursue any legal remedies against you. The public session is designed for members of the public to speak on issues for board consideration. By law, the Board of Education is under no obligation to respond to public comment. Issues raised by members of the public may or may not be responded to by the board at the conclusion of public participation. This portion of the meeting is meant to hear public comment, not to have a dialogue between the board and the person speaking. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking and not disrupt the meeting, or you may be asked to leave. All statements should be directed to me as the presiding officer, and no one may address board members individually. Do we have anybody for public comment number 1?
Good evening. Dr. Jennifer Rogoff, 1 Millstone Court, Sparta.
Hi, Ms. Rogoff.
And I'm speaking directly towards action item 15.30, which is the approval for spring coaches for 2022-2023 track. First, I want to commend the entire board for putting the coaching positions for fall, winter, and spring on the agenda at this time of year. Not too long ago, I stood here speaking to the board about the consequences of not having these positions and those of our music program approved in a timely manner, and I am so pleased to see this put forward in June, so thank you all. I didn't see the music directors listed yet, or some clubs I'm looking for, but I am very positive and sure they'll be on there soon, so thank you. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of a group of parents. I'm actually the track outgoing track booster president, and I'm here to speak on behalf of a group of parents in regards to the decision to appoint Mr. McCarney as the boys' head track coach for the spring season. And before approving Mr. McCarney as the head coach of the boys' track team, I want to ensure that the entire board is aware of the unfortunate events that unfolded as the season came to a close. On May 26th, the Track Booster Club hosted an end-of-season celebration for the athletes, coaches, and volunteers. At the close of the event, Coach McCarney asked to address the families. At that time, Coach McCarney introduced a new attendance policy for next year, the 2022-2023 season. Several families who have children who play year-round sports, including soccer and basketball, left the dinner with some pretty big questions about whether their children would be able to participate in both track and their other activities. But what happened next came as a complete shock to me and to many other families who have students participating in the track program. With the state sectional track meet to be held at Vernon High School in just a few days, Coach McCarney cut 4 boys from participating in the meet due to inattendance at a single practice that week. These 4 athletes had earned spots to compete based on their performance times set at meets throughout the season. These students were registered to compete. It is my understanding that meets at this level require an entrance fee, and the school and this board paid the entrance fees for these activities. These kids didn't establish qualifying times for meets of this caliber by sitting home watching TV, not doing their work. These are dedicated athletes. Yes, for some, track is just one sport they compete in, and yes, some of these sports do overlap. I also informed that the athletes may not have communicated with Coach McCarney about their absence prior to missing, and for that, the students are remiss. But does the punishment match the crime? And how was the information communicated to the kids and their families? We spend so much time talking about social emotional health for a reason. These kids were finally participating in a normal track season to have it end abruptly by the decision of a coach with little thought to how this may affect them or their teammates. When I became aware of the situation as track booster president, I immediately reached out to Mr. Stoner. I understand his stance to support the coach. I urged him to please speak to Coach McCarney to gather the facts and to please reconsider letting the boys complete. Unfortunately, the result was that 4 boys were not permitted to join their teammates and compete at Vernon. For these boys, this season came to an abrupt halt. Before you approve Coach McCarney, I urge you to look further into this situation to ensure that he is the right candidate and to ensure that things are handled differently in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rowe.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Sanchez. I'm 122 Sparta, Summit Road, Sparta.
Hi, Ms. Sanchez.
So I noticed that the fall, winter, and spring coaches for all the sports are being approved tonight, but I don't see any of the club advisors on the agenda. And I hope that that will be on the agenda in July, or maybe August. But last year, we were all blindsided when the clubs were not approved in August, and therefore not permitted to begin in September as expected. So I wanted to bring this up now. Clubs are very, very important to so many kids. They provide leadership experience, a social outlet, the ability to compete and win awards, and they're important for the college resume. I have a daughter. She is leaving tomorrow morning for the Hobie Leadership Seminar. She was recognized at the Underclassmen Awards for her participation in clubs, for her leadership role in clubs. If she is applying to colleges in a year or a year and a half or so, and it shows that like she was in Model UN freshman year and was a communications director of Model UN in sophomore year, and then what, quit? Like, she needs the ability to follow through on those endeavors she took on as a freshman. She is also an attorney in mock trial. Her college resume is gonna reflect that she did, she was a representative and then an attorney and then quit. Like, she won't have the ability to explain my school district didn't approve advisors. So it is so important that these clubs are permitted to continue and given the support and recognition that they really need. And the advisors, should be supported because they are really important to kids. And a lot of the kids that do these clubs, they take time and effort. I mean, you have so much time and effort. A lot of these kids are not involved in sports. Like, this is where they compete and win. And they really need to continue to have that opportunity, and I urge you to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Anyone else for public comment number one? Can I have a motion to close public comment number one, please?
Motion.
Kurt, thank you. Second?
Second.
Wendy, thank you. Okay. Oh, all in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for your public comment. I just want to follow up regarding that. I promise you, the co-curriculars will be on next month. They have been posted. They're currently being interviewed. It's a long process. It's a lot of process because we have to post, and we have to interview all applicants. That goes for coaching and for advisors. We learned a lesson last year. I learned a lesson last year. Believe me, they'll be in place, and we understand the importance of these co-curriculars. So no worries there. And then, Dr. Rogoff, regarding your concern, I will absolutely follow up with administration regarding that and get more information.
All right, moving on to section 15, personnel and policy. Can I have a motion to move 15.1 through 15.42, please?
So if you're going to follow up on that, are we voting on this tonight, or are we waiting until you follow up on that? How does that work?
Can we vote on it all except the track portion?
Sure.
And that's part of 15.30.
Thank you.
Sure. I can administratively withdraw that particular name from the agenda. So if you were to approve the coaches, it would be minus that name. Pending further review, following up with administration.
Okay.
So voting yes on it all, except for that.
Consider that name not on the table right now.
Okay. Okay, so we're still going to move 15.1 through 15.42.
Yes, and I have an addition to that just came in, a bittersweet addition to the personnel portion of the agenda. So I just received a letter of resignation from Joe Leone, the principal of Alpine School. Bittersweet because he's beloved and we appreciate all he's done for the district, but great for him. He's moving on to a bigger position. So I would like to add as a motion to accept his resignation with best wishes and congratulations. And I would say that would be effective 60 days from tonight or sooner, depending on when we can grant his release.
Okay, and I'll make that motion, Matt. So can I have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, Kurt, thank you. Now we have.
That was including, that was all of them, including the one that,
Including that. Yep.
it's all of them, including the one Dr. Beck just added.
Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Added that, tabled the other, basically, and then so we drew the able. Right. Yeah,
Okay.
got it.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Grano,
Yes.
Mr. McKiernan,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Morris, Ms. Sealander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Pelesi.
Yes. Moving on to section 16, the curriculum section. We're looking to move 16.1 through 16.11. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Neve, thank you. Second?
Second.
Vanessa, thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Grano,
Yes.
Mr. McKiernan,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Morris, Ms. Sealander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Pelesi.
A yes on everything except for 16.4, which I abstain due to my wife being involved with the Sparta Education Foundation. Moving on to section 17, finance. We're looking to move 17.1 through 17.21. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Who was that?
That's Vanessa.
Vanessa, thank you. Second?
Second.
Patrick, thank you. Discussion?
So I just have a question about the 17.9, which is the food service company. So all of the employees that, work in the buildings and in the schools, what happens to their employment now that it's a switch? Are they going to be re-offered their jobs? Or
Yeah,
how does that work?
it's typical when a transition like this happens that the new company would pick up the current employees who are familiar with our students, with our district, with our operations, with our machines,
Okay.
ovens and things like that. It's typical that
Okay.
that would happen.
Thank you.
And one more question to that. Is that just awarded based on I believe there was supplemental, but it was based on the lowest bid coming in, correct, on that one?
There were multiple factors that played into awarding this. It included the guaranteed profit, and there were some operational matters where they came out with the advantage.
Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Smith?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Grano,
Yes.
Mr. McKiernan,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Pelleggi.
Yes. Moving on to section 18, operations. I'm looking to move 18.1 through 18.2. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Neve, thank you. Second?
Second.
Wendy, thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Smith?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Grano,
Yes.
Mr. McKiernan,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Morris, Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Pelleggi.
Yes. Section 19, do we have any old business? Nope. Moving on to section 20, any new business? Nope. Okay, moving on to public comment number 2. The board uses the second public comment period to invite comments on all matters pertaining to the school district. Please state your name, municipality, and group affiliation if appropriate for the record. Each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. There will be a countdown timer. You will be notified when there is 1 minute remaining, and then again when the time is up at the end of 3 minutes. Speakers may not cede their time to others. The board uses the public comment period as an opportunity to listen to citizen concerns, but not all issues brought to a board meeting will be resolved this evening. Rather, the board will, in appropriate cases, delegate the authority to investigate the matter to the superintendent or his designee. The board does not endorse your comments, nor will the board be held liable for comments you make about a staff member or other person which they may consider defamatory and/or slanderous, as that individual retains all rights to pursue any legal remedies against you. This public session is designed for members of the public to speak on issues for board consideration. By law, the Board of Education is under no obligation to respond to public comment. Issues raised by members of the public may or may not be responded to by the board at the conclusion of public participation. This portion of the meeting is meant to hear public comment, not to have a dialogue between the board and the person speaking. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking and do not disrupt the meeting, or you may be asked to leave. All statements should be directed to me as the presiding officer, and no one may address board members individually.
That makes me tired listening to that, sorry. But first, thank you, I appreciate it, I wanted to mention this last time. I appreciate that you've come a little closer so we can see you, so thank you for that. Just a couple of quick questions. The first one is based on the presentation about the College of St. Elizabeth. Will that survey that's going to students and staff, students and staff, will the questions be shared with the parents prior to the students taking that? Yes?
I'll answer them all at once.
Okay.
Jane. I'll write them down.
Okay, thank you. And then, Joe Leone, sounds like you weren't surprised about that. Do you have a process in mind for backfilling that job or for filling it? Or are you going to go out to put out a request for resumes, or do you already have a candidate in mind, or how are you planning? And that's it for my questions.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing with the food. Last time we changed food service providers, it was only a matter of 1 year, and it flipped back. Did you guys do a taste testing, which you are allowed to do and consider in the selection process? So that's it, thanks.
Hello, Caitlin Gagnon, Summit Road, Sparta.
Nice.
Hi, how are you? I just wanted to thank Dr. Beck and Ms. Rossi for holding the forum this evening. I know this was a topic of heavy debate, but I think it went fairly well, very well. One thing I'd like to mention, I had mentioned this during the forum, I just want to make sure I'm mentioning it publicly before the board. I had a question of the collaboration with the board when it comes time in August to vote to implement the new standards into our curriculum. I'm hopeful that the board will follow the recommendations of Dr. Beck, Ms. Rossi, and the district staff who will be responsible for overseeing and executing the implementation. I want to reiterate how important it is for an opt-out option to be made available to the public. That being said, I do think it's important that we adhere to those standards being set forth by the state for the sake, as Ms. Rossi mentioned, of our district's funding, and also just for the sake of precedent. Let's just entertain another subject for a moment. Let's say history. If a group of parents were to find certain history lessons problematic, we wouldn't reject the implementation of those lessons from our curriculum entirely. But we should certainly make reasonable accommodations for all. So it sounds like Dr. Beck and Ms. Rossi, you're striving to do exactly that, and we recognize that and we appreciate it. So I speak for many parents when I say we look forward to the collaborative implementation of the curriculum next year along with the board. We look forward to partnering with you all to help guide our children through these challenging discussions. We look forward to putting our trust in our teachers, and we hope that the community can find compromise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this the last meeting for Mr. Smith? And if so, I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for what you've done with the district.
Aw. Breaks my heart.
Anybody else for public comment number 2? No? Okay, can I have a motion to close public comment number 2, please?
Motion.
Kurt, thank you. Second?
Second.
Neve, thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have some responses. Okay, I have more responses. Yeah, the plan would be, we try to as much as possible when we share surveys with, the surveys that students are going to take, we try to share those as much as possible. And when I say as much as possible, as long as we have access to that ahead of time, that it's not password protected or anything like that, then 100% we would plan on sharing those surveys with parents ahead of time. There's no reason not to. Regarding the Alpine principal position, yeah, I did have a little bit of notice on that. He was waiting to get board approved. He got board approved this evening. We're currently exploring multiple options regarding that position. I'll just leave it at that. And the food service taste testing, we did not go through a food service taste testing. We went through the bid process, and we looked at numbers and operations, and also prior experiences in the district, and also prior experiences our administrators have had in other districts with the same food service company. So we're very confident by making this move. Caitlin, thank you for your comments, and thank you for your support, as usual. Yeah, Ms. Rossi and I have been in contact. Obviously, Ms. Rossi is spearheading the curriculum writing through the curriculum teams, as she said this evening, with the health and PE. And then she's been keeping the curriculum committee updated as well. And we're going to continue to keep the curriculum committee updated, and then eventually, when we have more of a solid draft, keep the rest of the board updated on that matter as well. And like you said, the plan is to implement the state standards, because that is what is required. And the only question is, how do you implement those state standards? And that's how we write the curriculum. You know, how will those lessons look, and how will it be implemented? And that is what Ms. Rossi shared a little bit of tonight, and what we are still working on. And then the last comment from Jenny Derricks was regarding Ron Smith. This is Ron Smith's last regular Board of Education meeting. I've worked with Ron now for exactly a year. I have learned more from Ron about Sparta School District and about the area of finance and operations. I've learned more from Ron in 1 year than I've learned over a course of years from other business administrators. No offense to those other business administrators. It's just you cannot replace the amount of the wealth of knowledge and experience and sense of humor that Ron Smith has. And he will be greatly missed. We are greatly looking forward to bringing on Joanne Black, who will help us out starting with our July meeting. But Ron Smith will be greatly missed.
Thank you, Dr. Beck. Moving on to For the Good of the Order, and I'm going to kick it off by echoing what Dr. Beck said. Obviously, I've been on the board, we're just about going on a year now, and I'm going to say exactly what Dr. Beck, or repeat exactly what Dr. Beck said, that in that short amount of time, the amount of that I have learned, me personally, not only from, a finance perspective on the board, but board operations in general. I mean, I think Mr. Smith has held every position possible on a board multiple times over the course of God knows how many years. But no, see, there you go. I wasn't going to say it, but in all seriousness, thank you, Ron, for your dedication, your hard work, you're going to be sorely missed. And again, nothing against Ms. Black. We are extremely excited to have Ms. Black here, but you are irreplaceable, so thank you.
May I?
Go ahead.
I'd
It's yours.
I'd
The
like
floor
to-
is yours.
Oh, wait, can I
sir.
say something about you
Thank the
first,
board
Ron?
members, those
Okay.
present and those that were here in the past. It's been we had a lot of challenges. We did a couple of tough things. We're going to go into the CSIP program, which is a little foreign to what happened. Nobody ever did one here in Sparta before, but you came up with almost $7.5 million worth of great projects and saved the taxpayers a lot of money. I'd like to thank the administrative staff. They've been very cooperative to work with the building principals, the supervisors, and the staff. I can't say enough about the business office staff in particular because I haven't really, had a finer staff overall in years and years, if ever. These people all know their job. They all work together as a team, and you're lucky to have those employees and take care of them because. And last but not least, I have to thank the superintendent. We've got along great. We worked, we talked. We must have met 5 times a day for 5 minutes at a time. I know a lot of times I'm in there and bother him, and he thinks he don't need to hear that from me. But the last thing I want him to say to me is at some point, why didn't you say something? Because I'd rather have it. And he's got a great sense of humor. We had a few laughs every day, didn't we? So you got to work hard and laugh hard. So and Mark, it was nice to work with you again.
Likewise.
Again.
Likewise.
So thank you
Pleasure.
all.
I just want to thank Ron for his knowledge, but also his friendship. And I'm going to miss him, but hopefully I'll see you at Dunkin' Donuts. He's not even listening. I love you, Ron. No. Also, I'm sad to see Mr. Leone is going. He played a big role in my kids' lives since they started in kindergarten, and me as a crazy first-time mom sending my babies there. So thank you for putting up with me and letting me be part of PTO and humoring me and going along with all my antics that I had, including getting slimed. So thank you, Mr. Leone.
If I can add one more. Ron, thank you for demystifying the budget process to us as new board members. And I just really thank you for your commitment to public education through all these years. You really set the standard high, and you know how there's those books where you can answer questions and then they put the book together. I think we should do one for all of these questions, all this knowledge that you can just continue to pass on to us because we're just so privileged to have you. So thank you. Even though our time was short together, I really appreciated running into you at Dunkin' Donuts and having time with you.
Thank you.
And so thank you. And echoing Neve, Mr. Leone has been a wonderful addition to our district, and has always heard my concerns. If I had them, answered questions, made us feel welcome. Loved seeing him get slimed with our students, became a really good sport, and COVID wasn't an easy time for people to connect, but I really felt like he harnessed that to really connect with the families in a new way, and I saw him grow, and so we're very thankful for his service. Wish him well.
Okay.
On a different note, well, Ron, thanks. Echo everything everyone said. Well, let's move on. It's getting late. The robotics team was just recently recognized at town council meeting, issued a proclamation with all their great achievements over the past year, so I just want to congratulate them. And the Sparta Police Department did a great job hosting lead day for the fifth graders. It was a big field day, obstacle courses, K-9s, helicopters. They all seemed to have a great job, great fun, and it was beautiful weather, so that was that.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to our second closed session of the evening. Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, provides for the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Sparta Township Board of Education is of the opinion that such circumstances exist to discuss matters of attorney-client privilege, which are exempt from public participation pursuant to New Jersey Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, Open Public Meetings Act. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Sparta Township Board of Education shall enter an executive session on June 23rd at 10:29 p.m. The board will reconvene in public session at the conclusion of executive session. The information discussed during the executive session will be disclosed to the public as soon as it is determined by the board that the information is no longer confidential. We expect to be in the closed session for about 20 minutes, and no action will be taken coming out of closed session.